My name is Sylvia. I'm a 38-year-old housewife working part-time. My only daughter, Melody, graduated from college last year and moved out. So now I live with my 55-year-old husband, Victor. Now that I've finished raising Melon, I have a little more time on my hands. But then my life took an unexpected. My husband and I met on a blind date. We liked each other from the first. Things went quickly and we got married. Soon, we were blessed with a daughter. Despite being my first time rafting with children, I was determined to do my best. I quit my job at the same time as him and became a stay-at-home mom. I did all the housework and childcare myself. My husband was not at all supportive. If he finished work early, he would go drinking, and on his days off, he went out for fun. If not, he just sits around in his nothing. And yet, he had this kind of attitude towards me.
Housewives are easy, You, yourself, and live for free.
He's so out of touch with the times. I've thought about divorcing him, but I didn't want to divorce him just because he was uncooperative and had an attitude. Besides, it would be better for if both parents were together. So I changed my point of view a little. I would raise my daughter on my own, relying on my husband. He's only good for bringing in and that worked for a while. But when my daughter started middle, my husband started taking money out of our house.
I have to pay for company equipment.
Under the guise of that, he often took a large amount of money from me. Naturally, the family finances were, so I started working part-time to help pay off my debt. Still, my husband complains to me about anything.
Don't try to talk to me about work. I'm just a part-timer. What kind of work can a woman do? It's just as easy as playing.
He said things like this to me. He has no respect for women in general. I didn't outwardly oppose it, but I had to pay him back someday. Late one winter night, the house phone. I picked up the phone to find it was my uncle, my mother's brother. He told me that my mother had been taken to the hospital by ambulance and was in critical condition. He gave me the name of the hospital ready to go. I woke up my sleeping husband. I begged my reluctant husband to go with me, and we drove to the hospital. My mother had been living alone since my father passed away a few years before. My father was a big, strong, I loved my mother, who smiled peacefully at him. My father died after several years of illness, but even after my father's death, I still see my father beside my mother living modestly, and she always listened to my worries about my husband. I can't believe my mother may be soon. I was sitting in the passenger seat for her to hang on. When we arrived at her hospital room, my uncle and some other relatives were already there. According to what I heard, my mother woke up in the middle of the night with chest pains. Unable to decide whether to call Anne or not, she called my uncle. She finally called an ambulance after her uncle strongly advised her to do so. My uncle, who lived nearby, immediately came to my mother's house. He also accompanied my mother to the emergency room. He called me as soon as he found out they were taking her. I can never thank my uncle enough. My mother, lying in bed, was already unconscious. I couldn't speak to her, but I called her. The doctor who examined my mother said that it would be sometime before she was in a critical situation again. My relatives and I called out to her and encouraged her. Then, we all started talking about arrangements that would need to be made. Suddenly, I heard a voice complaining.
It's finally over. You called me up in the middle of the night and wasted my time. Hey, let's go home.
It was my husband's voice. He was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room, showing his frustration. I was so preoccupied with my mother, forgot he was there. Go ahead. Although my mother is not conscious, it's possible that she can hear my husband. If he keeps saying any more nasty, want him to get the hell out of here. Then my husband sighed, exaggerated.
She made me waste my time for doesn't even have much money to lay. Well, she was an old hag, wasn't she?
After he left, everyone was concerned, worried about me. I took a deep breath, calmed down. Them.
Thanks. I'm all right. Don't worry. I've decided to divorce.
I returned home just as my husband left work, and I immediately packed a box of immediate needs. I made a delivery to my uncle's house and left home with my personal belongings. To be honest, I had been secretly planning to divorce my husband once he reached retirement age in a few years. But my husband's comment at the hospital made me decide to accelerate the schedule. I can't live under the same roof as who insults my mother like that. I took a room at a business hotel for some time. Then I contacted the lawyer I had been consulting for some time. That night, I received a call on my cell phone from my husband.
Hey, why aren't you home? Your mom's still in the hospital, but you don't have to take care of her, do you? I mean, the funeral's not even here yet. Why don't you come home and cook dinner?
Please leave me alone. I won't come home anymore. Victor, I'm divorcing you.
Hearing that, my husband snickered.
Oh, if you can do it, do it. You're just a housewife with a part.
And he hung up the phone. A few days later, however, he called. He was a completely different man.
What is this? What are these divorce and alimony demands?
His voice was filled with impatience. Contrary to my husband, I was calm.
I told you. I said I will divorce you, and the alimony is justified for the anguish I've suffered from you.
What are you talking about?
I've been through those horrible things you've ever said to me. I documented it in my diary and on. My lawyer said that would be good,
Evidence.
I guess he had no idea that I was scored a divorce behind his back.
Anyway, any further communication at divorce would have to come through lawyer.
That was all I said and hung up the. A short time later, my husband and finalized a divorce. Our savings of $200,000 will be divided, but his share was equal to the amount of alimony for the harassment. So we agreed that I would get all one savings. Of course, my husband didn't accept terms from the beginning.
There is no such thing as a wife's earned it. If you take over your useless mother-in-law, it's mine too.
The lawyer calmly explained the situation to my husband.
If we have to go to mediation, it's going to cost a lot of money. Is that what you want?
By hinting about the money, my lawyer silenced my husband. When everything was finally settled,
You took all my money, you bitch.
Are you all right?
the lawyer looked at me with a bitter face and said he was concerned about me. But it didn't hurt me at all. My husband's words sounded like the loser. Less than 2 months after the divorce was finalized, my mother took her own life. I served as a chief mourner with my relatives. A short time later, I received AK, uncle and his wife. They wanted to see me as soon as possible. I was a little nervous and went to a restaurant where we were meeting. Once we were seated, my uncle got right down to business.
Actually, I got a call from Victor borrow money. I didn't know about your divorce and how it happened, so if I had picked up the phone and heard his voice, I would have immediately hung up. But instead of me, my wife picked up the phone.
Yes, it was I who spoke. I knew what was going on with you at that time. Also, I had heard about his outburst in the hospital room, so I had no intention of lending him begin with. But I was curious about what he had. I pretended to be sympathetic, and is why he didn't have the money.
Pretending to be fooled. But seriously, why? Why does he need to be so rude? I wondered. Sure, I got the couple's savings after divorce, but my ex-husband has a job, so he's getting paid all right.
And he gambled away his... Whenever he ran short of money, he would borrow from a consumer credit company. Eventually, he ran out of money, and the credit companies garnished his salary. And when his boss found out that he was in debt, Victor took early retirement.
What a mess.
But didn't he receive severance pay even though he retired early?
Well, what is it? I guess it's called an advance payment system, isn't it? It was added to his salary and bonus time ago. Moreover, the severance pay he received was based on the amount he would have received if he had worked until retirement. But Victor retired early, so he had to pay the difference where he couldn't borrow any more money from consumer loans. And he can't find a new job, so that's why he's in financial trouble.
I didn't know he was taking advantage of an advance payment plan. I vaguely remember that he stopped his pay stubs at some point. I'm sure that's when he started using an advanced payment system.
So, after listening to what he had said to him, "Oh my gosh, let me call my husband," and hung up the phone,
My aunt laughed like she was entertained. Later, I found out that my ex-husband had called not only my uncle, but also some of his relatives and asked them to lend him money. How could any of my relatives lend him? Even those who came to the wake farewell ceremony knew that he had been in the hospital. I have no sympathy for my ex-husband. I guess he ran out of people to turn on. One day, an unknown number called my phone.
Hey, it's been a while. How's things?
That was my ex-husband. A voice like I'd never heard when my six married. I got goosebumps from the sound of voice.
I went to see your mom's house. The construction. Are you gonna live in it after the renovation?
No, I'm renting it out.
To tell you the truth, I would have there myself. But my ex-husband knew where it was, though he thought it would be dangerous, so I didn't tell him. I don't even want to give him the whole backstory.
Then where do you live now?
I would never tell you. Well, I'll just say it's a condo with a concierge at the entrance where you just walk in.
My ex-husband is speechless with surprise. No wonder. I inherited a fortune from my mother, way out of proportion to the alimony received. The story goes back to when my father passed away a few years ago. He was a tax accountant, and during illness, he asked a colleague in his profession to take care of my mother's inheritance. I was already concerned about my ex-money management when my father died. So I had offered to disinherit. My mother inherited my father's huge estate without my ex-husband's knowledge. Back then, when my ex-husband asked for his father's inheritance, I lied to him. I told him that my father's inherits negative because of the mortgage on house, so I renounced it. My ex-husband seemed to be easily seed and didn't ask me about the inheritance anymore. And now I have inherited everything left from my mother. Even though my ex-husband tries to touch me, I am still safe because we are divorced. My mother was a modest woman who wore simple, high-quality clothes for a long time. That's why I think my ex-husband and my mother were poor. He had no idea of my intentions or money came from. I am not going to tell him.
If you can afford a condo, why not invest some money? Right? Sylvia, please. We even had a child together.
The only thing I'm grateful for is Melody. But that's all. You left me to raise alone. You've always looked down on me, and we spent together as a couple was unbearable. Do you really think I'd help you?
Well, let's let bygones be bygones, back together again.
Absolutely not. Besides, you're a full employee, right? You get paid well, right? Unlike a like me. And if you work for a few more years, you'll get a retirement bonus, right?
What?
What? Anything wrong? You're getting retirement bonus, right? You better use it wisely. Well then, goodbye.
I finished what I wanted to say and the phone. I pretended I didn't know about his crisis. I felt ashamed of myself that I used married to that guy. I set the number he called to block all incoming calls. One day, about 6 months later, my Melody came to stay with me.
Mom, I love your new place. I wish I could live in a house like someday.
she said as she looked around. Your rock is a little too big for a one-person show.
Melody, your place is nice too. You like it, didn't you?
That's true, but I can't afford this room with my salary. Well, it's only my first year, though.
She takes a sip of her after-dinner coffee and smiles wryly. Seeing her smile makes me feel peaceful inside. My ex-husband is rarely mentioned by my current partner.
Mom, actually, there's someone I'd to meet.
Oh, really? You have a boyfriend?
Well, don't laugh, but he's a tax attorney. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to use that. I thought it was fate,
Wow, Melody. What a nice coincidence. Grandpa must be very happy.
My daughter smiles shyly. I look forward to the day when I see my future husband standing next to her with a gentle smile on his face.